Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 302nd episode. That's a weird way to say that, of Constructed Criticism. I'm your guest host this week, back baby Mason Clark, joined by another special guest.
Am I a special guest?
You are in my heart, baby. Matt Kling. Matt, Spencer's out this week. He's got some, family stuff going on and some mental health things, and he just wanted to take the week off. He felt like he needed to do it, and he asked so I could fill in. So I'm here to talk Pioneer. Are you excited?
Definitely.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you?
I think I'm about a 7, but I don't go much higher than that most of the time. So
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought you were going to go like 3, so a 7 is just like, whoa, hello. Pretty excited to get that high of a number. What else is exciting is this week's episode. Like I said, we're going to be talking the power rankings for Pioneer this week. It's going to be pretty interesting stuff. We have the challenge and the 5-0s. I believe we just used the challenge, but we also got to look at the 5-0s. And, you get a lot of information out of that, a lot of different ways to build the decks. And so we're going to be going over all of that. But if you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/ccmtg. And then from there, you can leave a question like our lucky patron here did. You have to answer on the show. This Patreon question is, can you talk about how you approach formats where there's an actual defined best deck? Main example of late here is the new standard where Golos, and past standards with Teamer Energy and Red-Black Aggro. So, yeah, how do you define these metagames when they're kind of already being figured out?
So I think that the best way to approach these, and I used to think that there was a difference between like more competitive events and local level events. And I used to think that it was more important to try to beat the best deck at bigger events. And it caused me to make a huge mistake at the Pro Tour that I went to. And I ended up playing something that wasn't red-black or red-black mid-range aggro, whatever it was called at the time.
Yeah, red-black vehicles or whatever.
Yeah. But now I just believe that having a definitive best deck in a format is just makes it easier than any other format because you just play that deck.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So when it comes to like how you're approaching it, so you're just kind of like, I'm gonna play this deck. Are you gonna try and play like the version that's best versus the field? Are you gonna do things like move to Noxious Grasps in your Bant food deck? Become Soul type food. Like, how are you moving forward with it?
That one I think does depend on the event, but it would take a pretty specific case for me to play something more metagamed, I guess. I think just playing the best version of the deck is more important than trying to tech for the mirror.
Interesting.
Like, the thing is, you're just almost never going to play against the mirror as much as you think you are, right? Even if it's, the best deck in Magic would only have like 25% of the players playing it.
Sure, maybe for older formats and maybe 40 for standard. Like, you never see a Pro Tour that's more than 40, really, of even like Golos and stuff like that.
Have you? Was there? I mean, that's a much smaller tournament though. That's what I'm saying. If you can find yourself into a 64 player tournament where, half the people are teaming with themselves,
sure,
then like you're going to get a much more inbred metagame.
That's fair. I do think there have been Pro Tours in the past where there's been like 30% Bant company, and just stuff like that. Like,
it's possible they've gotten up to 30%, but I'm not sure that that's true. 25 would be like really pushing the upper limits of the.
Sure, that's fair.
The most popular deck at a 500 person Pro Tour or 300 person Pro Tour.
I mean, I was Star City Games luckily changed the invitational to be Pioneer Modern instead of Standard Modern. But before that, my plan was to play Bant Food. I was to play Blue Green Food or Sultai Food with like main deck Agent of Treacheries was where I was going to start my testing to have just a huge haymaker in the mirror. And so I normally find myself kind of leading it to being a little bit bigger in the mirrors when I think the mirrors can be really popular. Like in Teamer Energy days, I played like Bant. I'm sorry, not Bant. Black Teamer, where you would play the Scarab God as just a way to like trump the mirror. But you're not like going. In that case, you're changing your mana base. But like for Agent of Treachery, you're not going too far out there. You're just kind of being like another step slower.
But I think even in the example that you've cited here, a lot of the best players thought that Teamer Energy was just a better deck, even if you knew you were going to play the mirror.
Sure, that's fair. Yeah, that's reasonable. Just the way I approach it,
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's fine, and I think that's a way that a lot of people do approach it. And I think that's a better strategy than playing something else.
Mm-hmm.
But what you have to realize is that there are going to be enough people playing something else that usually just playing the best version is going to be better. Like, I've been grinding a lot on ladder this season. I am very likely to finish top 1,000 Mythic as of right now.
Yeah, you have 12
and
hours.
And I think I'm like rank 700 right now.
Okay.
As we're talking. and I was playing mostly Simic food on the way up there, and then I saw the Sultai food deck, and I was like, oh, maybe that's great. Like I'll try that and see uh, see if it's better because everybody's trying to say it's just the better version of the deck. And I played it for a few games, and the mana is just awful, and the Noxious Grasps aren't that great, and I don't know. It didn't strike me as anything being better about that version other than you just get to like feel like you got your opponent with the Noxious Grasps. I mean, I've won that matchup from the Simic side like probably 6 times in a row. And the thing is, like, I'm playing main deck Brazen Borrowers, and they're almost exactly the same as Noxious Grasp in all cases in the mirror.
Interesting.
Except against Nissa. Nissa is the one reason why you want Noxious Grasp, because sometimes you're getting rolled by a turn 3 Nissa.
Sure, that makes sense. You just need to actually kill it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would buy that Brazen Borrower is not good enough against Nissa.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope that answered your question. If you want to do that, once again, you go to patreon.com/ccmtg. You can be just like our newest $10 patron, James H. So thank you so much, James, for becoming a patron. And as always, you can just share the show. We understand the show's always going to be free. It's unreasonable for everyone to pay or stuff like that. But if you do want to support the show, one way to just, show your friends and tell them, and them listen, helps grow the show.
Yeah, I also want to point out that I'm not saying that you shouldn't test anything. You definitely should test all different things that you think might be good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play a best deck just because everybody thinks it's the best deck. But
yeah, I assume, and maybe we should just mention that here. I assume that like if you're getting to this point in the question, it is like a concise thing, right? It's like
yes,
Golos, Bant Food, Teamer Energy, Red Black, like that kind of
yes.
stuff. So
yeah, definitely.
Yep. All right. Well, hopefully that was helpful. We're gonna move on to always improving, and I'm gonna throw it to you first, Kling. What was your always improving moment this week?
Well, as usual, I don't think I had like a specific level up moment. But I've just been playing a ton of Pioneer, trying to get ready for the PTQ this weekend. Just exploring all the different decks.
Yeah, just trying to get a feel for that format. It's kind of weird, right? Like we don't have a lot of information on it.
It is weird. I mean, you just don't play against the same decks basically ever. It's like Modern, but even with a less defined metagame.
Yeah, less defined, and you don't get spaghettied as much. It's really a bizarre experience. I will say that in the last 48 hours, Is It Phoenix is just all over the place. Like it was posted in the 5.0 and people were like, oh, this is a deck. I love this deck or whatever. Excuse me now.
So yeah, it had 2 in the top 8 of the PTQ online, or the challenge online.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe that it had any other copies in the top 32.
Interesting. Okay.
I've also played that deck a fair bit. I actually played it the day before the challenge, and I was not that impressed. Like, the deck is very good when you're drawing Treasure Cruise, and pretty bad when you have to play any of your other cards.
Sure, I believe that. I'm sure we're gonna get into that more. I have mixed opinions on that deck. It's all kind of tainted with like the what's gonna happen with this BNR and stuff like that for me specifically. So I guess I can get to my always improving moment. I am starting to prep for the Invitational that's in 2.5 weeks now. So that format is now Pioneer as of this morning. And so I was playing some Pioneer before, and I was just trying to have fun and like do wacky things. Like I played like Newmont's boar deck and stuff like that, and I played like a Field of the Dead Splendid Reclamation deck that I saw on Twitter, and just kind of doing fun stuff like that, just trying to relax and enjoy myself. But now it's kind of turned into like, okay, what's the most hyper efficient thing I can do considering all this information, and like, is there going to be a ban? Should I be even wasting time considering that kind of stuff? So that was my always improving moment this week. Is kind of like you just playing some Pioneer,
right?
Yep. So we should probably just move on, since this is very much tied into our training grounds this week, which is just Pioneer power rankings. We have the challenge. We went through all the decks and gave them the points assigned to it, and we've got some honorable mentions, and we're gonna kind of go through this. And so I think we should just probably move on to that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's go off with our 2 honorable mentions. First up, we have Mono Red Aggro and Mono Blue Devotion. So 2 aggressive decks for our honorable mentions here, both getting 4 points. Let's start with Mono Red. What do you think about Mono Red in the format?
The biggest problem I have with Mono Red is that I think Oko is unbeatable, even on your best draws.
Sure. Okay. So here's my thing: is like, I would like to know what version of Mono Red this is, because there's like a lot of them. There are like some burn heavy ones. I saw some Chandra Phoenix ones. I saw some that were like more creature based. I saw some that are Torbrand based. I'd like to kind of know, what the Mono Red was doing, because I think that matters a lot, right? Like, if your plan is just to throw burn spells at them a bunch, you probably can't beat Oko. But if you're playing creatures, maybe you can beat Oko. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, so I mean I lost to a mono red-ish deck once with Oko, and it was because they went off with Burning Tree Emissaries and Bushwhacker on turn two.
Sure, just like play
We're
two
able,
burn
able
trees,
to
thank you.
attack it. And
Yeah,
even then, it was almost enough to win the game because it just saved me like 10 life right there, you know?
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I would assume that this is an amalgamation of all the mono red decks that finished, that placed at the in the challenge rather.
yeah, it's the one deck here where I have the least idea of what it means, right? Like the rest of the decks are like Mono Blue Devotion and the five we're gonna talk about soon. It's kind of more clear what we're talking about. This is the one where I also think Mono Red is secretly maybe one of the better decks after the first wave of bannings. Like in my head, what I expect to be banned, I should say. So like, which by the way, I just think it's only going to be Copycat. I think this Copycat puts a lot of pressure on the format. So I think once Copycat's gone, Mono Red might actually be great despite Oko.
I
But
don't think that the banning of Copycat is going to help mono red, but I could be wrong about that.
I think not it, but what it will do to the format at large. Because there are just things you can't
Sure.
play now because of Copycat, right? And I think Mono Red would prey on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's possible. I think that the fact that there isn't a concise mono red deck and it only got 4 points, even lumping all of them together, is a pretty good indication that it's probably not very good.
Interesting.
It's not like it's a deck nobody thought of, right? Like it's almost the first deck most people play.
That's interesting to me because it just made me think that there's something there, but they haven't found the distilled version of it that's good.
I mean, the more things that you can say are the same general strategy and lump together, the better chance that it has of getting enough points to make it onto the power rankings,
Sure,
right?
that's true. Yeah, maybe it's just there because it's just like you said, a bunch of stragglers, for lack of a better word.
Right.
I don't know. This thing, I need to look closer at that and see. But I do think I think Froston's a really powerful card. I think Eidolon's really powerful. I think your sideboard is kind of lacking, but in a weird way. I don't know if that's the end of the world. Like sometimes I think people over sideboard with burn. So like it could just be that like four Searing Bloods, some rips, skull cracks, and like something else is just all you need.
Yeah, I honestly think people just over sideboard with every deck.
Sure, I buy that's probably true. There's a lot of sideboarding that goes on. Let's talk about Mono Blue Devotion here. It's another aggressive deck. It's a deck that I'm honestly kind of surprised. I kind of thought this would be one of the decks that people tried to pick up as being an old standard deck and just wouldn't quite compete. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I also brewed up a mono blue devotion deck that looked somewhat similar to this, except this one looks. The version that I was trying to build was going to be something that I thought might be able to beat Sahili.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is a lot more focused on protecting your own game plan rather than stopping your opponents. To my knowledge, there was only one mono blue devotion deck in this challenge,
Oh, so
and
this is
it got all of its points from a top four.
gotcha. Okay, yeah, I Mono Blue Devotion, I guess is a thing. I don't know. I almost wonder if it's just like a week one. I'm an aggressive deck that can curve out. You know.
Yeah, I mean, Curious Obsession is also very powerful. So, you know,
Yeah.
if you're playing against something that any matchup where card advantage actually matters, they're often just getting, bodied by that card.
Yeah, that's kind of a surprising thing that card advantage mattered a little more than I thought it would right now, which is a little surprising. Like
Yeah,
our best
I
performing-
definitely agree. I was not expecting, games to be playing out the way that they are. Like, it looked like everything was just going to be broken combos, the sky is falling kind of thing, and it looks way more tame than that.
Yeah, my opinion on Pioneer right now, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this, is most people call it modern light. I'm kind of calling it standard plus, like, which is like a huge differential, right? Like, slightly better standard is a lot different than slightly worse modern. So
Yeah, it's also probably a lot more accurate.
yeah, I just don't know if the decks are actually that, for lack of a better word, degenerate. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, obviously, Copycat's really strong, but, like, I think Kethis kind of sucks right now. There might be a build of it that's good. I think Rally kind of sucks. I think all these Emery decks kind of suck. I think the Jeskai Ascendancy deck kind of sucks. Like, there are just a lot of, like, really bad decks right now. Now, maybe they'll get there in time, but, like, I can only talk with what I know at the moment. And there are a lot of these decks I thought would be powerful, but they just haven't turned out to be that way. In fact, even Marvel has been kind of lackluster. Now, part of that's Cat, but, like,
Yeah, that deck has been beyond lackluster. The actual problem is that you just don't get the time to set up that you had in that standard format. In that standard format, nobody was like really able to play aggressive decks, and it allowed you to not only do nothing for the first 4 turns if it meant an Emrakul, but also miss sometimes.
Yeah, and now you
and
just
that's just not a thing you can do in Pioneer.
Yeah, I beat some Emrakuls last night. Like turn 4 spin, hit Emrakul. It was just like, not enough. And I wasn't even playing like a combo deck. It's
Sure.
just like, holy cow. But yeah, I mean, it's probably worth saying, like, if you're sitting at home right now, listening or driving to work or whatever, there's no Marvel in this top 5. Like, I know that's a deck a lot of people are really worried about. There's a lot of narrative going around about that. It didn't get enough points to even be an honorable mention. It's just not present.
Yeah, I honestly feel at this point that deck is unplayable, and I've tried to play it a bunch of times since Pioneer was announced.
Yeah, I think that if we're gonna play it, it needs to be in something like we were trying like a Kethis deck that was playing it because it's a legendary thing you can mill, and then it also finds your combo.
Sure,
Something
and
like
you're
that.
already playing Emery, so
Yeah, and so it was kind of a thing that it worked with what was going on, and then you just had the Woodweaver Pusselknot, some lands, and a tune, which you kind of already want with the Kethis deck. So
I think almost all the combo decks are nerfed right now by not having fetch lands.
yes, yeah, it's people are really underestimated how good their decks are going to be mana wise because they're so used to fetch land mana bases.
Right. Like we were just talking about Rally earlier, and I think that Rally would actually be
Good
pretty
if it could
reasonable.
cast its spells.
Yeah, pretty reasonable if you could play a 4-color mana base. I mean, you can play a 4-color mana base. It just comes with concessions, like not having untapped lands all the time and not being able to play solidly 4 colors. Like you kind of have to splash them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a reasonable amount of aggression in the format too. So
right.
It's just hard.
Yeah, you're being pressured, definitely.
Yeah, let's go to number 5 here though in our power rankings. Speaking of pressure, Jeskai Cat coming in with 8 points. This deck was the first cat deck that really busted on the scene back when Kaladesh came out. What do you think about Jeskai Cat and Pioneer?
These decks were pretty interesting. I was noticing that a lot of the Jeskai Cat decks were actually just true combo decks. I was expecting a lot more like Jeskai control decks with just like Saheelis and Felidar Guardians.
Yeah, I did
but
not.
What I was seeing was they were just like
mid-range decks.
Not even mid-range. It was like actually just Jeskai. It was like Felidar Guardian, Saheeli, and then like 32 draw spells and then lands.
No, interesting. So they're like kind of Turbo Cat.
Yeah.
See, the Saheeli decks that I saw that I was interested in when it came to Jeskai were like Reflector Mage Spell Queller decks.
Sure. I played against a version that was probably doing some of that earlier today, and that was cool. They were playing like Mantis Riders and Heart of Kiran's and then the combo.
Manish Rider.
Yeah, it seemed quite good. It was very good against my Oko Teferi operation.
Sure, I buy that. Yeah, haste is powerful, flies over the top of everything.
Yeah.
Seems reasonable. Yeah, Jeskai Cat, the interesting thing that I thought is, so normally what happens in formats like this is we find decks like Cat Combo, and then for a little bit, Cat Combo is just the best deck, right? Like, all in on the Cat. And eventually people figure out how to stop it, and then what happens is the combo decks become mid-range combo decks, like Rally, like 4-color Cat, and that becomes the default thing. And people kind of skip that step with Pioneer. It's like, no, we learned our lesson. Like, we're just going to become 4-color Cat. But while 4-color Cat might be the strongest thing right now, the builds haven't been that impressive. And I almost wonder if it's because, like, we're jumping too far in the cycle, so we don't have the information we need to adapt.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Honestly, I hadn't considered that. The only caveat to that though is that it's not like Copycat is some undiscovered deck, which is usually the case when a new combo deck breaks on the scene, right? Like even Rally, like nobody had thought of using the card Rally of the Ancestors until who was it, Matt Tumovich, something like that?
Sounds
built
right.
the deck with Mogus's was it Mogus's Marauder?
Mogus's Marauder, yeah.
Yeah. So nobody had even thought of Rally of the Ancestors before that. So it made more sense to just play a combo deck that nobody was interacting with. Here, I think that everybody understands that Saheeli and Felidar Guardian are things that can happen to them. And so they're building their decks and sideboard with that in mind.
Mm-hmm. And so maybe that's the real reason why?
That would be the reason to jump to step 2, right? Which is the more mid-range centric deck.
Sure, but then the mid-range decks can't adapt because they don't know their metagame. It's like trying to play a mid-range deck week 1, which is normally not a great plan. It made me not play out that way this week, but
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I wonder what it's gonna look like if Saheeli was never banned. If Cat would ever ban, right? Like I'm making a pretty big jump that Cat's getting banned here. Like they said they're gonna be aggressive and police the format. I just can't imagine a world where Cat doesn't get banned. But I'd be curious to like know that timeline, right? Like the split where it's like we never ban cat. What do decks look like? Like does cat
So
eventually refine itself and become unbeatable? Like what happens?
I would be surprised if that's the way it worked out. Honestly, I think that even now, four color copycat is a fine deck, but it's not even. I doubt if its win percentage is worthy of banning or anything like that, but I believe that they will ban it because people hate playing against that kind of stuff.
I think it's also oppressive to the format, right? Like so something's always going to be oppressive, right? There's always going to be some best deck that's going to put pressure on the format in some way.
Right.
But a turn 4 instant win, I think puts maybe too much pressure on the format personally.
I don't even think that that's. It's only it's only more obvious of a turn 4 win, right? Like I've played Sultai mid range where you just go Oko into Kalitas, and like that's a turn 4 win every matchup where I've ever had that combo.
Yeah, that's not true though. I can beat that. Like I can just play a Field of the Dead ramp deck. Like if Sultai mid range becomes the best deck, you can just play. You can build a deck that can beat that, right?
But you could do the same thing for Copycat, right? Your point was that you could not play certain strategies because Copycat was in the format, and my point is that there are also certain strategies that are just going to fold to Oko into Kalitas.
Well, there's a difference in instantly losing the game and being in a like a deterministic loss, right? Like an example of this might be in Modern, where like when I resolve Primeval Titan when I'm playing Amulet, a lot of the times my opponents have lost. There's a percentage where they can still win, but normally it's not possible, right?
But that's my point. It's only the perception that's different, though, right? Like if there's a 95% chance you win with the Primeval Titan versus a 100% chance that somebody wins with Storm, really the only difference is the perception on it, right? Like people just don't enjoy being killed that way.
Sure, I mean that is true, but they also don't enjoy Marvel, which might be a reason Marvel gets banned. But
Sure.
like I do think I just think that Jeskai Cat puts too much pressure on the format, and the fact that it does instantly kill matters a lot comparative to deterministically killing.
Maybe it's not even as consistent as casting Primeval Titan even. Like obviously Primeval Titan's not in this format and it would be way too powerful. But actually maybe that's not true. Yeah, I guess Field of the Dead.
Yeah, I was playing some Hour of Promise decks last night, actually before we knew about like I had to be playing Pioneer for real, and I played against these Sultai decks, and it was a joke. Like my deck,
I mean that makes sense to me.
Yeah, but like Hour of Promise is basically Primeval Titan. You just don't get the 6/6, and that was good enough a lot of times. So
well, or the extra copies of Hour of Promise when you attack.
yeah, that's true. Man, you get to attack with your prime times. You're so lucky. Holy cow! All right, let's move on to the next deck. I'm sure we're gonna be talking about all these things kind of in context, so it's not like we're done with this conversation because this deck is a very interesting one to see. I think at this point in the metagame, is it Phoenix coming in at 11 points? What do you think of the Phoenix deck?
So I have no doubt that unless Treasure Cruise gets banned, at some point the best deck in the format will be uncontestedly a Treasure Cruise deck.
Yeah, just
I don't know how long that timeline takes, and I don't know that this is the best way to use those extra 3 cards. But it's likely going to be blue and red, possibly with a third color, but less likely, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at every format that's ever had Treasure Cruise legal, it was like blue red and maybe another color or two, and it was just the undisputed best deck.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the actual Phoenix package, I've not been that impressed by that stuff. Like Arclight Phoenixes are a little unreliable, sluggish, and you don't have any of the 0 mana spells, so like you're not really cheating them most of the time. Like it's like you're doing a lot of setup for a turn 4 Arclight Phoenix.
Yeah.
When you could just cast it for as a 3/2 haste for 4.
I think this deck kind of shows what I think was the secret mode of the modern Arclight Phoenix deck, which is that Thing in the Ice is actually just insane. Like,
yeah, I agree that it's primarily a Thing in the Ice deck. I'm not as confident that that's as insane in
Pioneer.
Again, because you don't have the 0 mana spells, right? Like, so you
Sure.
see somebody play they use their second turn to play a Thing in the Ice, and like realistically, you're not expecting it to flip until turn 5 or turn 4. Turn 4.
The crazy part though is that in some matchups that's actually better for you, because like as the Phoenix player, because now they can't commit to board, or they have to commit and hope you can't flip, right?
Yeah, it depends on the matchup. I mean, I'm not sure what decks we're playing against that don't have any way to kill an 0/4 or Reflector Mage or
Yeah, I mean,
a way to win the game by then.
I think Sultai midrange, while it has a lot of kill spells, like I guess that's not a great deck for the actual flip and the Thing in the Ice, but
that's a great example, right? Because like normally you would think that Is It Phoenix, like in Modern at least, it would have just beat up on all these mid-range decks, right? Like I assume that like Jund was like a pretty great matchup for Phoenix, right?
Jund was a hard matchup for Phoenix, like
Oh,
Black
was
White.
it really?
Yeah,
Okay, interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I know that in the finals of the challenge this week, Sultai did beat Arclight Phoenix, and I think that the main reason is because Thing in the Ice is just not good in that matchup, and Arclight Phoenix is just kind of stuck in all the matchups.
yeah. So the problem was his Thing the Ices weren't very good, and so the Arclight Phoenix players had to like use something like Aria Flame or Pyromancer's Ascension to win, and
Hmm.
they just need to answer those. And then at some point, they have like their scavenging oozes and their spell bombs and their blah 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 blahs. And they just run you out while getting a little bit of an advantage the whole way. So yeah, you had to cheat in a lot of Phoenixes in order to beat it.
Well, I was able to beat. So I've played Is It Phoenix a little bit in Modern, and I was able to beat Jund probably. I don't know. I think I only played against it like 3 or 4 times, but I think I was 100% in the matchup. But I could believe that it was bad because, first of all, that's a pretty small sample size. And second of all, I think that my opponents might have made some mistakes. And Jund is pretty unforgiving of that kind of thing.
Yeah, Jund's pretty unforgiving, that kind of thing. And also, Phoenix has the potential. Like, one of the great things about Phoenix is you could win almost any matchup, right? Like,
Right.
you're this super consistent deck, but also you had, like, turn 1 looting, turn 2, like, Morphos looting thing, hit you for 9, next turn bolt you, you're dead.
I mean, I also felt like Pyromancer's Ascension was like almost the trump card in that matchup. Like that's pretty much how I won all the games, especially post board.
Yeah, that like I said, like Thing in the Ice isn't so great in that matchup, and you're threat light, so you had to win with one of your weird ways to win, like a non-creature way, basically. But
Right.
if those get checked early, right, like they get discarded, or you get Abrupt Decayed, or Assassin's Trophied, it
Right.
can be sometimes hard to overcome that.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. Well, that's enough on that part of Is It Phoenix from Modern that's banned. Continuing to talk about the Pioneer one, this deck is the best Treasure Cruise deck right now, right? Like you said, do you think Treasure Cruise is going to be going soon? What do where are we at?
I think it will go eventually.
Yeah, I think so,
I
too.
honestly be fine with seeing it go sooner than later because the thing about that card in Dig Through Time is they might not be broken now, but
they
they
will
are
be.
100% going to be broken at some point.
Yeah, so that's the thing I agree
It's
with
not
you.
it's not an if, it's a when.
Yeah, like you can, and it matters a lot on how you want to curate the format too. But like you can leave that stuff in Modern, but ultimately what you're doing is you're basically saying I'm going to kill a deck later because Treasure Cruise is strong enough that's going to facilitate a deck kind of like it is now, right? And then eventually we're going to print something that makes it so we have to ban this card, and then I'm going to ban a deck, right?
Right.
And it's just a card that's proven to be too good before, and I don't know if that's good enough reason to ban it now, but I think it's understandable to ban it now.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure either what the requirements are for a banning, but it reminds me of Urza though, right? Like I remember playing some of the Urza stuff before, and I was like, well, if this isn't broken now, like definitely there's going to come a day where this is just oppressive. I don't know what it's going to look like, but you just can't leave this card in the format indefinitely and not expect it to just dominate at some point, right?
Yeah. And all it took was Gilded Goose. That's what they were
Yeah,
missing.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's funny. I mean, like it took food was really what it is, right? Like the food just synergized so well with Urza, and I'm sure that if it was left alone, indefinitely, it would just continue to get better and better as they printed more artifacts that did other things.
Yeah, and as we print, I mean, right now we don't have many ways to like thought scour ourselves, etc. But there will be cards and there will be decks.
Yeah, exactly. Like Treasure Cruise with Thought Scour is just completely absurd, and it's something that I was thinking just the other day. Honestly, was that I imagine that they stopped before Dark Ascension to avoid a lot of those problems.
Yeah, I think thought scour would be so bad if this format, like just things like that. I think there are a lot of cards that are like just from right before we started that would be terrible for the format. So
Yeah,
yeah, I hate cantrips too, but like
it limits design space a lot to have a card like Treasure Cruise in your format, right?
yeah, it really does. That's true. I also wonder how much they'll design with Pioneer in mind. We know they don't design with Modern in mind. Watsy's made that clear. But, like, is Pioneer something they're more interested in? Maybe keeping closer tabs on it first? I don't know.
Pretty unlikely that they'll design anything with it actually in mind. But I think that when I say limits design space, I just mean that like.
Yeah,
I think that my assumption would be that oftentimes when they're printing things that end up being completely broken in Modern, it's not like a surprise. They're just like, well, we kind of need this for the standard and the limited format. So, if it turns out that we're right and it's broken in Modern, we'll just ban it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, like the Ayavugan thing, right? Where you're just like, well, we're gonna print a bunch of 3-mana Eldrazi's in this set. It's probably gonna be bad, but we'll do something about it when it happens.
Yeah, and y'all got to prove that it's going to happen first. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
totally reasonable. Yeah, I more meant you talked about that, and then I had the thought of I wonder if they will. So I'd be
Right.
curious to see, in an M file in a year if they're like, this card's great for Pioneer, So
Right.
all right, well, let's move on to our second and third place decks, which are tied. We're going to start off with the one that is listed for me as in third place, and that's Green Devotion coming in with 12 points. So worth noting before we go further, these extra decks just have one more point than Phoenix. So it's not like we're talking leaps and bounds here. What do you think of Green Devotion? I think this does encompass the Blue-Green Devotion deck as well.
Yeah, I believe it does. Its best draws are really, really powerful, but I think it's just too inconsistent for me.
Yeah. It's a weird deck, right? Because the Leyline in a weird way is a slow payoff, but a payoff. The Krasis in the blue versions is pretty good. The Garruk's pretty good. But some of the draws just don't interact very well. But it kind of forces you to do something, right? It's kind of like a weird litmus test on the format. Where it's like, my things aren't super great, but I'm going to do one of them. And then you kind of have to beat me.
Right. Yeah, I think it's like fail cases pretty much a turn 3 Nissa, roughly.
Yeah.
Probably has draws that are a little worse than that sometimes, but like realistically, if you're keeping something that's worse than a turn 3 Nissa, you probably should be mulliganing.
Yeah, it seems like a deck you need to aggressively mulligan with.
Yeah, definitely. But I don't know. I'm just not blown away by a turn 3 Nissa in Pioneer at the moment.
Yeah.
It's fine. It'll beat some of the decks for sure, but...
Yeah, I think part of the reason we're seeing it so high up here is, like you said, it's fine, right? And week 1, that's actually kind of like a totally reasonable spot to be in. It's like, yeah, my deck is consistent and does something pretty powerful. Like, cheating the mana system is powerful, right? And I think, the Ross Merriam making a 24 Hydra on turn 4 pushed the narrative maybe a little too far in one direction. But playing a Pelucranos on turn 3 and then activating it and killing their board and hitting them for 9, that is still like, all right, next turn you're dead, figure it out, So,
right. It's also a list that's hard to get wrong.
Yep.
Like it's the lists are going to be, if not well tuned, they're going to be close enough to where it doesn't matter.
Yep, and the deck gets to play Walking Ballista, and it's like a pretty good Walking Ballista deck actually, which helps you interact with the cat combo, which was probably the perceived best deck going into the weekend. So just like a great payoff card that also protects you. It's just
definitely,
and it's probably it has to be the best Walking Ballista deck we've seen. So I'm not surprised to see that. Do you think the Green Devotion decks need to like figure out more better creatures to play? Or do you think we've kind of figured that out already?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some things you can try to do to have more answers.
Mm-hmm. Are you like
sometimes the format's going to force you to interact, and this deck is currently really bad at doing that.
Yeah, it needs something like Voracious Hydra if it's going to do something like that.
Yeah, I was actually a lot more of a fan of Dragonlord Atarka, but the mana is so bad in splashing either color. Like, I would rather try to do it in mono green if I could.
Yeah, I wonder if you can maybe splash Super Light on red and then just play into Garruk minus the Primal Hunter, I believe. The 6
Yeah. It's Caller of Beasts.
Caller of Beast, yeah. Just Caller of Beast and an Atarka and take over the game like that.
Yep, that's the dream.
Yeah. All right, well, it's probably worth talking about the deck that we have here in second place, and that's 4-color Copycat coming in also at 12 points. We've kind of alluded to it earlier. What are you thinking about Copycat?
I think it's really powerful. I honestly think that the problem with most of the lists that I'm seeing right now is that they are too much... I don't know. They lack card quality, I guess, which is hard to say for a deck that's containing Okos and Teferis. Like, obviously, those cards are great.
And Oath of Nissa and Elvish Mystic. And...
Well, hold on. Let's not get it twisted. Oath of Nissa is not like a good card.
Oath of Nissa is a good card. Wait, hang on. Let's have an argument here. You think Oath of Nissa isn't a good... Don't okay me like that. You don't get to do that to me. You think Oath of Nissa is a bad card in our 4-color Planeswalker deck where it finds
I obviously don't think it's a bad card, but if I'm looking at card quality, I'm not counting any cantrip as card quality.
Okay, so you think Brainstorm is?
I think Ponder. Well, Brainstorm's not a cantrip though.
That's fair.
Brainstorm is card advantage.
So what about Ponder?
Ponder, I think, is filler. Yes, if I was looking at high impact cards, I would not count Ponder.
All right, how about this? Even our filler cards are pretty good with Oath of Nissa. I'll just chop all that
Sure, sure. Um, but yeah, I think that you're playing a lot of mana dorks is the real problem. Like, and while they do powerful things, they are not great draws in the late game, and they don't do anything for you past turn 4.
Yeah, these decks have no removal too. That's the thing that
Right.
really surprises me is that like I remember with the 4-color copy decks of old, you didn't have one drops besides a tune, partly because of the format, but also you just had interaction on the curve. And you
Yeah,
just
they
don't
were
now.
playing what Harness Lightnings and Oath of Chandras, and
Yeah, Harness Lightning and Oath of Chandra. And Oath of Chandra was nice. I mean, Oath of Chandra is reasonable to play now. Like, you can blink it with your Felidar Guardians, and it does, like, pseudo protect your Planeswalkers while being a removal spell. So,
right.
I'm surprised to not
The
see that
the
kind of stuff.
yeah, the thing was that you could actually reasonably close out a game with damage with the copycat deck before. Like I probably won almost 50% of the games that I played with 4-color Saheeli in standard with just damage, right?
Yeah, oh, easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
And that's just not really a thing that's been working out in Pioneer. And I realize that the bar is higher, right? Like there's going to be better creatures on average in Pioneer. So your deck has to be better to compete on that axis. But I think that right now everybody's just too interested in the 1 to 3 thing, and basically when you don't draw an Oko, it's just bad.
Yeah, I agree. If you, well, I don't know if I agree that it's just bad if you don't draw an Oko. I would say if you don't draw a 3-mana Walker, it's just bad.
Teferi can be good enough sometimes, but he's definitely more awkward on turn 2 than Oko is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Oko is the best Planeswalker of all time. So
So
I do wonder if the
I
Royal
think your best possible draws, like the ones where you really feel like you got your opponent the most, involve turn 2 Teferi. But like on average, Oko is going to be a lot better on turn 2.
Yeah, I wonder if the Royal Silence is worth talking about in this deck, by the way. I was going to talk to you about this before I realized we were doing the podcast tonight. It's kind of fits more maybe in the Jeskai plan of like a mid-range deck, but lets you loop through your deck, apply actual pressure. The ultimate's not unreasonable. Works well with Heart of Kieran because there's a billion loyalty.
Sure, yeah, I could see something like that. I'm definitely a lot more interested in playing something like Mantis Rider now after having played against the deck. I think the person that I played against online playing that was basically in the exact same wavelength I was, which is that we actually need to make the mid-range plan better. It's not that the copycat stuff isn't good enough or that our dig isn't good enough. It's that we really actually need to play things that people have to answer.
Yeah. I think the Royal Silence does that in a weird way. Sorry for that yawn there. It's been a crazy day. But I don't know. It does just dig, but also the +1. I'm sorry, the +1 that's +2/+0 trample and first strike is actually a lot. Like it doesn't feel like it would be a lot, but it just is.
No, I agree. I think if we can play enough creatures around it, it would make sense. I don't know if you saw this, but there was like a white weenie deck from the challenge that was playing copycat in it.
I did not see the white we need deck playing copycat, but that's cool.
Yeah, so that one seemed pretty cool too. That would be something, kind of in the area that I'm trying to explore with it.
So to have like Thalia's Lieutenant and stuff like that, so you get like things to actually blink with your copycat that are good, like Thraben.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's hot. That's really hot. You can blink your Loxodon, and all the creatures you use to cast it get a +1/+1 counter. Kappa.
I don't think it was playing Venerated Loxodon, but
Sure. Yeah, that was just a joke. But you call that a funny in the biz. Normally they're actually funny though when you do them. But yeah, that seems pretty interesting. I'd like to see something like that. I'd like to see maybe just because when people say 4-color cat to me, it's funny. It doesn't even need to be 4 colors. It's just mid-range cat. Like I just want a
Sure.
mid-range cat deck. I don't really care how we do it.
Right. Yeah, I mean the biggest appeal of playing the fourth color is obviously like Oath of Nissa and Oko now.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but yeah, I'm definitely just not as into all the Llanowar elves.
Yeah, I like some goose in my deck, but not some elves in my deck right now. I think I just
Right.
don't want
Yeah,
to flat
that's
out
pretty
on
much
them.
where I'm at as well.
Yep. All right. Well, let's go on to the final deck. Sultai midrange coming in with 14 points, so just 2 more points than the last 2 decks. I believe a big chunk of that is because it did win the challenge. Kling, this is Modern Plus, and it's supposed to be crazy combo decks, Kethis, Emrakul all over the place. We talked about zero Emrakul decks today. Zero combo decks, like besides Copycat, like weird combo decks that people thought were going to happen. And a mid-range deck won. What is going on?
Yeah, well, I think the fact that the mid range deck won is actually a product of a lot of those decks not coming to fruition, right? Like
Mhm.
if more people were playing Emrakul, then Sultai mid range would be a lot worse of a decision.
Yeah, but they're just not.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
maybe
just
they can't. Maybe that's the real truth of it, right?
well, it's also possible that those decks are kept at bay by Copycat, right? Like
Well, that's what. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think
if
Copycat's
Felidar
fine.
Guardian if Felidar Guardian gets banned, maybe there's more room to play with Emrakul. But then we end up in this mid range arms race, which is actually the worst thing in Magic.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that in our Patreon question of the week. But like, uh, I I think Emrakul will get banned, like because of that reason. I don't know.
Sure.
There's a reason. Like,
I'm sure it will eventually.
yeah,
It's just a matter of,
it's kind
how
of like
how
Treasure
how
Cruise.
important of a tournament do you have to play in the 2 weeks while Emrakul is the best deck?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Hopefully it's not. I don't know. I don't know if I want to play Copycat at the Invitational right now. I'm basically under the assumption that I'm gonna get like the week before the Envy Copycat's banned from WotC, like 4 weeks after Pioneer's been announced or whatever, and it's just gonna be like you know. But we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think Sultai midrange is a powerful deck that has a lot of powerful cards and is totally reasonable right now. I don't know if that's where I want to be in Pioneer.
Yeah, I think that it's really preying upon a lot of these decks not being refined at the moment.
Yep.
The mid range stuff is all going to be pretty good, almost no matter how you build it. Like, certainly you're going to gain a lot of percentage by having an optimal list for the field, which I imagine wasn't the case for most of these lists.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the answers are pretty generic. You have Drown in the Lock, which is going to be good against any kind of spell deck if you can get them to have enough cards in their graveyard by countering stuff, and then it's also like a fine removal spell. Fatal Push is pretty ambiguous, or not ambiguous. It's pretty. I'm not sure what the word I'm
I
looking for
almost
is,
want
but
to say ambidextrous. Like, it works both ways, but that's definitely not it.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. It's
Yeah,
too
yeah.
long of a day, man.
Anyway, yeah, it's definitely going to be useful in mostly all the matchups. And then your creature suite is just going to be, while not as powerful as like the modern creature suite, it's just undercosted creatures and then planeswalkers, and it's a strategy that's been proven over and over again. And as long as other people have decks that only kind of work, it's going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it's fine to keep playing this coming week, but I don't think it's nearly as good. And I think you need to be always adapting your deck, right? Like,
Right.
it's a mid range deck, and so by default you don't have like a 75, right? You're not like Storm where it's like you can get away with playing the same 75 from 5 months ago, even though you should probably change cards. You need to be adapting the metagame. So
Yep,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I don't have much to say on this whole time mid-range deck. It's clearly fine or whatever, but it feels like a thing where it was well prepared for Oko, capitalized on it, and good on them for like having a read and taking it, taking their shot.
Yeah, I think Oko is just also a lot more powerful than people realized. Even when we were complaining about how broken it was in Standard, like I don't think anybody knew that it was going to be like the best thing to do in Pioneer, and also the best thing to do in Modern, and also the best thing to do in Vintage.
Yeah, I mean it's the best planeswalker of all time. It just is, right? Like,
I mean, it's certainly getting there, right? Like
I think the fact that it plays to the battlefield and
right.
Magic's so much more about that now is kind of what pushes it over the edge. Where if the stack and hands mattered more, it makes sense that Jace is the best planeswalker of all time. But the context of the metagame is that Oko is there, and Oko is controlling the battlefield. So
Sorry, what was that?
I was saying that Oko is playing to the battlefield, and so while it's doing that, it's kind of the best deck of all time. Well, I'm sorry, it's the best planeswalker of all time right now because Jace, we're not playing with the stack anymore. But I think that's going to probably wrap us up here for our power rankings. Is there anything else you want to say on the deck?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Those are mostly my feelings on the decks. I think that there will be plenty of things to go over the top of Sultai mid range once people start going that route.
Yeah, for sure. So what would you play in Pioneer? You've got a tournament. You actually have a tournament this Sunday, right? Like or this Friday.
It's on Friday, yeah.
You're playing the PTQ.
Yep.
What are you playing? What are you doing as of right now? Obviously, it might change.
As of right now, I have no idea.
Nice.
I mean, if I literally had to register a deck I would probably register Sultai.
Sure. That's reasonable.
But that being said, I am going to test a sweet Field of the Dead Felidar Guardian Saheeli deck tonight,
Oh
and
god.
I'm hoping that's great.
I can't wait to watch this while I export this file. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I am going to say that I would play a cat deck of some kind, because I think you can get it kind of wrong but still win just because of the nature of cat, right? And everyone's still kind of undefined. But if I wasn't allowed to play a cat deck, I'm a believer, Kling. You can attack me if you want. This is your chance. Mardu vehicles. I just think I've been trimming on the vehicles. I don't have just 8 2-drop vehicles like I did before. I've got more creatures, more interaction, and I've just been consistently applying pressure on my opponents. And I think part of this is honestly a metagame call when decks like Mono Green Devotion are things people are playing, and you get to unlicense their Polychronoses and then hit them, and you're always curving out on people. I think it is a playable and reasonable deck. I don't know if long term it is, but right now it's totally consistent. And if I had to play the Envy tomorrow, I might just play that deck and just be like, listen, if people are bringing weird stuff or unrefined decks, I'm going to crush you. So
I've seen some pretty cool things people have done with vehicles that I liked a lot. Like Gingerbrute seems like actually a pretty sweet card in a lot of these decks. But a lot of these decks are playing like a somewhat vehicles package with like all the glitters or like Insole Artifact and things like that. And I kind of like that direction more than just playing straight up Mardu vehicles. I think that your mana is like pretty bad for no reason, and like it's not like you're even getting massive power upgrades by adding a bunch of different colors.
The version I have right now is basically mono white that like slight splashes some stuff.
Yeah, I just don't believe that playing mono white splashing for unlicensed disintegration is a real thing.
Sure. What about Ferocidon as well? Hello.
I mean, Ferocidon might be fine, but then why do we need to play black?
Because we have unlicensed disintegration. No, I don't know. I have heard that from a lot of people. I am 100% willing to believe I am wrong. But as of right now, I do believe in just putting pressure on people. And I think it is better against the mid-range decks than Mono Red is. So I don't really want to be playing Mono Red. And like the Mardu Vehicles deck just doesn't really lose to like Sultai or these blue-white control decks I've been playing against. Like, if you're trying to grind me, even seasons past, Vehicles is very good at grinding back. So, and you have like a very adaptive sideboard. I think that's part of where every league my sideboard gets a little better, and I'm getting a little closer to like figuring stuff out. So, that's where I'm at with it. If you liked the show and would love to support it, once again, you go to patreon.com/ccmtg in order to support the show. You can always help out there just by sharing the show as well. And I think that's going to do it. Matt, if someone wants to find you, where could they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at TheWitchKling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much the best place.
They can't find you at our grid sponsor, Oasis Games.
They could find me if they wanted to come to Oasis Games in person.
Wow, Oasis Games, what a great place. I forgot to mention them earlier because I'm so tired. It's been such a long day. Sorry about that, Oasis Games, you rock. As they know, always. Sometimes, here's the thing. We praise Oasis Games a lot here on the show. But if you always praise it, it doesn't mean as much. Sometimes you just gotta neg it a little, you know? Just don't, bring it up. Just kind of let it go, you know? Like, you know their hair's looking good today, but you just don't mention it. Bring it up tomorrow. so if you want to find me, you can find me at Mason E. Clark on Twitter. You can find me at twitch.tv/TheMasonClark, and you'll see me at all the SCGs next year. The reality that I'm going to all of them is slowly dawning on me, Kling, and it is a harsh one.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Do you know how many events there are?
There are plenty if you're looking for them.
I feel like the number I counted up is last year was like 34, which means I have like 18 weeks off.
Yeah, it's like more weeks than not.
Yeah, and which 18 sounds like a lot until you think like, oh, they're like kind of broken up in chunks of like 2 weeks, and then that's just like,
sure.
So we'll see. Thank you all so much for listening, and tune in next week where Spencer will be back large and in charge. See y'all then.
See ya.